Hi everyone, this is Stephanie with High Tower Stitching. Today I'm back with part 2 of the big quilt that we started last time that we made 20 blocks for. And I'll slide it under here, and this is the quilt that we were working on, and I'm going to show you in a little while how I've set mine up so my rows go diagonally instead of straight across. And this is block 2. This is really a fun block, and this is the one also that I did by hand, and I hand stitched. So I'm going to do a little bit of that today and talk about that as we go. So this is the block we're going to work on. The first thing, when you start to pick out your materials, because every block is going to be exactly the same. There are 12 of these, and they're going to need to be the same. And so I just went with a dark green and light green, sort of a darker print and then a light print. And you can see how those came out. Because I've got my dark up here, and my dark, and then light and light. And they're going to be set the same way in your quilt. So that was one thing. Then you're going to need your background color. And this color is a cream color. And what you'll need to cut ahead of time is one 4.5 inch centerpiece. Cut 4 2 by 3.5 inch. Cut 2 3.5 by 6.5. And finally cut 2 rectangles that are 3.5 by 12.5. Now let's back up one step back to our colored pieces for this block. And what you're going to need are 8 2-inch squares. But like we said, you want 2 of your dark green, 2 light green, 2 dark pink, and 2 light pink. And those are 2-inch squares. And the first thing we wanted to do was create our flying geese. We're going to have 4 of those, one on each side. And when I sat down at the kitchen table to start, didn't have my sewing machine, and I was going to hand stitch, I said, well, I want to make sure these are always in the right place. So I picked where they were going to fall on the blocks, and every time I set up my block, I would put my piece that was going to go on the flying geese, and I'd put my colors in the same place that I wanted. And in this one, I just realized that it's got to be turned. I got my light up here and my dark up here, down at the bottom. And so that really helped me to get started. And as you look at this, I've already got 3 of my flying geese finished. And when you turn them over, they really look good, and you can tell a lot about it. So I've got one left to do. And one of the things that you need to do is for each one of your colored 2-inch squares is draw a diagonal line from corner to corner on each one, and then that makes this go well too. So I picked it up, and I'm going to use black thread. You can use a thread depending on how strong it is. If it's a older thread or weaker, you might want to do two strands folded over, or you might just use one. And I've got 2, so hopefully it'll help it to show up. I have a very nice sharp needle, and it's only about 1 1/4 inches. I like that. That's easy to do. There are some other longer ones that are pointed and are smooth in the middle and strong. So you choose the one that gives you what you'd like. Okay, and I'm going to start with the place in the middle of right where we're going to have the middle later. I'm not going to start at a corner because I want this to be the very best place it can be. I've tied a double knot in my string. I'm going to come in from the top. I'm going to go down, and I actually am touching my finger on the bottom to know that the needle got down and got through. And sometimes I'll just do 2 stitches. Lots of times I was sitting there and I just do 1, 2, and do a nice pull. Nice. And sometimes I'd get 3 on there. I hope you can see those with the black. And I'm just going to run that. And then I'd turn it and keep going. Get 1, get 2, get 3. And you also know that lots of times, and it's harder to hold it up in the air to do it, so these are not quite as little, but it's always a good idea to turn on the back. Then I could really see how my stitches were going and make sure that I was getting through. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to finish this one off. Straight up that line. That line is a great saver. And then I'm going to just back stitch about 2 times to hold that. Knot it off. All right, and then as you're looking at it, where your point was where you started, this time we're actually going to take off this corner piece down here on the left. So I'm going to turn it up a little bit so I can get it. And about 1/4 of an inch from the stitching line. Now it looks like this. And this piece is going to come down. And so in this case, I don't have this on iron right here. I'm going to finger press it because I want it to be open when I got down here to the bottom. And I've got a really nice start. Now I'm going to stop for a minute and knot up again. I just roll it around my finger, just like you do a regular knot. Roll it again. And if you don't like the tail too long, you can trim it off. All right, so we're halfway to our flying geese, and he's looking good. Now we're going to take the other one, and we have the line drawn on it. We know exactly which way to put it because we want the point to come down here to this one. And let's slide it over. This is just so restful. If you have ever hand stitched, you know that it can be really neat to do that. And again, I'm going to start in the middle because that's the important part. I've got everything lined up. You can pin it if you want to. And I'm going to be ready to start. And you can either go from the top or the bottom. And I'm going to start. And I'm going to wind my way up to the other edge. Now I've got that part sewn, and I'm going to take it, I'm going to cut off the corner to the right. And I'm going to fold it back, and look what I see. Really nice. So I'm going to go back in here, and you can press it just straight towards the dark if you want to, or you can open it up and finger press it. Either way. All right, and so the next thing you would do, and I'm just going to straighten this one out because I've got plenty of material there for that to do. Just makes me feel better. Okay, so now the next thing it says to do is to take the 2 of your flying geese, and you're going to take and sew one on the east side. And there I've got it already and opened, and I'm going to turn it over. And you're going to say, why is she going to show me how to sew this? Because I want your point down there to be the best it can be. And so I'm looking at the way I want to attack this one. Oh, there's what I want to see. Now, depending on the way you decided to iron or press the back side, you'll decide how you want to do this. But I like this way because I can look through that cotton, that white cotton material, and I can see the point right where those come together right there. So I'm going to take and just pin that so it doesn't move. I'm going to start over on the right. Now, if you're not sure about where 1/4 of an inch is, you can take and draw a line across there with a mechanical pencil, and that really helps. And so what I want to do is I want to stitch with those nice, especially since you're hand stitching it, if you're hand stitching it. If you're machine stitching it, you just start at the other side. And just like we did on the other, you know where you want to end up in the middle. Not for the second. We want to get right where that dot is, because that's where we know that there's the corner for those two pieces. And I'm just gonna, these are not beautiful. It's hard not to, when you're trying to hold it up and do it. I'm going to back up a little bit and then aim for my dot. And I'm going to just stitch on across. You can have noise in the background and just be sitting there sewing away till you get to the other side. And then double it. Okay. To me, it seems like I took a long time. I hope it didn't seem that way to you. I always go ahead and knot up when I end, because I hate to start and get ready to do a stitch and it slides right through there, so I know that one's ready. But now let's see how I did, holding it up in the air, and I'm going to pull it back, and I'm going to be happy, because if you look, you will see that my 2 points came together right where I wanted those two for that flying geese. So now I have done the 2 sides. Now you're going to do the other 2 sides. And the only difference is you had some 2-inch squares that were with your background color, and those are going to be added on. For the end of this square part, we're going to take and we're going to sew a white block on the end of each of those flying geese, and then you can press it to one side, or I like to open it, and I'm going to get ready to put it on my block. And this time what I want to do is I want to take, and I'm going to do the same thing I did a minute ago, and I'm going to turn it over, but I'm going to match my seams so there's not any folding on this part. You're just going to take and match that flying geese to the square. You're going to take the other side and match them up. And then what you're going to do is you want to look. This is what I have had so much luck with this. Again, you're looking at the white side of your fabric, and by looking carefully or getting the right light tilted, you can see right where they come together right there. And I bet you already know what you're going to do, which is going to be to sew all the way from the right-hand side at 1/4 inch through the seam, through your mark right there, and go to the other side. And you're going to do that 2 times for the north and the south. And once you get that ready, you have this cute square, and you could use it anytime in anything you wanted to do. And if you look, you can see that even where my points are on the end, I've got plenty of material, which is like what we looked on the other block, to put that on there. Now you had a smaller piece of rectangular fabric, your background. That's going to be sewn to one side and then the other one to the other side. And I'm just going to talk you through this. But what I do want to remind you is that when you pin it down, turn it around and look for your targets. And your targets are going to be, this time, not in the middle, but they're going to be right up here on the edge where you can tell that point is. And if you hold it up to the light and you tilt it just right, you can tell where it is. And I actually did put a mark, and when I did mine, and then I did another mark on the other one. They may not be in the same, exactly the same position on there, but that's all right. Then I took my ruler and I drew a line from the edge over a fourth and to the dot to dot. And then this is the other side I had already done, and I had sewed this one on the sewing machine because that was such a nice run. But as soon as I opened it up, I could tell that my points up at the top now were as good as the ones down at the bottom. So you've got those two short pieces on. Well, we don't have a square yet, do we? No. And we've got to go to a square. But you can see you're doing repeating things that you were doing that help you to get pieces in the right place. Once you've got your flying geese done, this thing will fly for the next parts, because you just put those straight pieces on after you've checked it. And then the final piece of this block, there is a 12.5-inch piece. And every time I look at that, I think, oh, I can't wait to get ready to quilt that. It's going to be really, really neat. And so now you're going to do the same thing that you did with a short one, except it's so long. And you're going to take and get your piece set right where you want it. And you're going to pin it. And right now I could see that if just the way I had it laying, my white was way too low to catch at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and have it about position. I'm going to slide that back up so that I know I have this much room that I can go through there. And I'm going to come over to the pink one. And I can see through there that right there's a place. And you can see what I mean about it's longer. So you'll really want to know where those parts are and then pin it so everything's in its place. And then take and do your stitching or draw your line if you're hand stitching your machine. If you have a 1/4 of an inch, you'll be ready to go and go across and hit those 2 points. And we already know, because you're watching those points, that it's going to open up like right. So here we are back at our home block again. There was our center. Here were our 1, 2, 3, 4 flying geese. We watched our corners. Then we came out, and on this other one, we put the 2 whites and 2 whites on this one. We put this one on first. Then we were ready to do that short 3.5-inch piece. But again, we watched where our marks were, made marks to make sure we hit those points. And then we were ready to add that long 12.5-inch piece on each end. And again, we took and, like, here's one. This is one of them that I hand stitched. And I actually had put my 2 marks on there. I had drawn my line. And then I had stitched it all the way across. And this block was finished. It takes 12 of these blocks for the quilt. And I've got the quilt laid out. I want to show that to you. And here I've got it laid out in the room. I started at the top left-hand corner with the green block. And in the description, I'll tell you how many go on each row. So you start with the green block. Then you have the next row that's got the pink, and go diagonally. There are 3 blocks there with one of your second blocks in the middle. And then it comes down, and it comes down. And as you look at it, you'll see that you've got those big openings on the left-hand side and on the top, and eventually on the right and left. And in the description, I'll tell you what size triangle to cut. Well, actually cut a square, a large square, and then cut it in half diagonally to make the sides. And then there's another block that makes the corners that go on there. And remember, those pieces are so nice and big so that you'll have plenty of material to cover that hole when you get finished. The quilt has 2 borders, a flowered border, and then another row of the cream or white border on it. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. Thank you for watching. I hope you'll try one or both of these blocks. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can't make this quilt. I'm going to have to go find my 7 1/8-inch material. If there are any notes, I'll add them in the description. If this has been helpful to you, or you had fun, or you found out something you didn't know, if you'd hit subscribe and like, that'd be great. And leave a comment if there's something you know that will help someone else. Thank you.